Hi, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. Thank you for joining us. I see the numbers of participants getting higher, so we're just going to give it a couple minutes till we get started. It'll just be a minute or two. Thank you. Going to give it just another minute. Okay, we're almost at the top of the hour. And it looks like our numbers are staying the same. So I'll give it another second and be respectful of everybody's time, and we'll just get started in just another couple seconds. Okay, I guess it is time. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. We want to welcome you to today's webinar, How to Win the Recruitment and Retention Battle for Medical Assistants. And we are pleased to bring you this webcast presented by the National Health Career Association. We have a few important announcements before we begin. The webinar is being recorded, and next week you'll receive an email with the recording link and other follow-up resources. This session is designed to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can submit questions by typing them in the Q&A or chat box, and our team will do the best to address all questions. But in the event we don't answer yours today, please know that we'll follow up with you personally after the webinar. Again, thank you for joining us today. My name is Lauren Pisa, and I'm in business development at the National Health Career Association. A little background on NHA. We are the largest allied health certification agency in the nation, offering 8 fully accredited national certification exams for both clinical and administrative professionals, such as medical assistants, phlebotomy, EKG, electronic health records, patient care technician, pharmacy technicians, billing and coding specialists, and medical administrative assistant. As a provider of certification exams for over 30 years, we have listened to the market and have evolved to provide learning resources to help fill industry demand. Resources such as soft skills training via virtual simulation, motivational interviewing, and patient engagement training that includes virtual simulation and training for those practices operating in or getting ready to transition to a patient care-centered model. Which leads us here today. NHA works closely with educational institutions and healthcare employers across the country to certify staff and train staff for career laddering opportunities. Again, thank you for joining us today, and let me introduce you to today's speakers. Okay, Crystal. First we have Crystal. There she is, off mute.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending. I've had the opportunity over the past 10 years to collaborate with educators and employers throughout the country as it relates to the evolution of the medical assistant role. I'm excited to share experiences throughout our time together and then also provide ideas on how to reimagine your medical assistant strategy.
Hi, I'm Kayla Steffen. I've also worked closely with healthcare educators and employers across the nation for over 15 years to implement various training, recruitment, and retention and professional development initiatives. I'll share some best practices and tried and true methods to help bridge any gaps and empower medical assistants to access a better future.
All right, so I'll go ahead and kick us off as the first presenter today. Throughout this webinar, you can expect us to discuss 3 prime topics. Number 1, just the state of the union of the medical assistants. What is the outlook as of today, and what are some macroeconomic factors that you should be aware of? Number 2, strategic recommendations for employers on medical assistant ways to recruit top talent. And then ways you can take control by organically creating a pipeline of medical assistant talent within your organization. Before we get started, let's meet the group. I'd love to hear from you. So take a minute to complete the poll. Do you recruit medical assistants, educate medical assistants, or manage medical assistants? We'll give you a couple of seconds to answer. All right, the polling's still going on, so we'll give it a few more moments. Very good. The poll is closed, so it looks like it's a mix of everybody. No matter how you answered, we have content for all roles involved. So let's start by talking about the state of the union. In order to innovate, we have to talk about our current state. Over the past decade, I have had the opportunity to speak with physicians in regards to medical assistants on their care team. And the general consensus is that physicians cannot do their jobs well without highly qualified medical assistants. MAs are vital assets to enhancing clinical outcomes, efficiency, and helping bring the joy back into practice for physicians. Bottom line, medical assistants are critical care team members. Despite medical assistants being vital assets, there continues to be a shortage of medical assistants in the United States. And this is primarily caused by three core reasons. Number one, there's an increase in volume of need for medical assistant graduates as clinics continue to shift to a team-based care or patient-centered care model. In this evolving model, medical assistants to physician ratios are 2-to-1 or 2.5-to-1 compared to the traditional staffing models of less than one medical assistant per physician or 1-to-1. The team-based care model alone doubles the need for medical assistants in the United States. The second reason is since 2014, the number of medical assistant graduates in the United States has suffered a significant decline due to school closures and decreased enrollments, despite the fact that the Bureau of Labor Statistics is projecting a 23% job growth. Economically speaking, there's just not enough medical assistants entering the workforce to fill the open jobs currently in the United States. And the third core reason, our employers are also citing a higher than normal turnover rate over the past 18 months. Burnout since COVID has reached an all-time high, contributing to critical staff shortages. So financially speaking, the medical assistant turnover is expensive too. The cost of turnover per medical assistant is about $14,000, which is about 40% of a medical assistant's annual salary. So I say all of this to lean into the theory that the first step in generating change is to be educated and aware. The great news is that these obstacles have created innovative opportunities for employers, educational institutions, and medical assistants as well. As Robert South said, an obstacle is often an unrecognized opportunity. I believe these opportunities are leading to the overall opportunity to highlight the importance of the medical assistant profession. MAs are emerging from the shadows, and there are things that you can do now to proactively address the inevitable challenges that practices face. So let's dive into the solutions. The initial recommendation is around the recruitment of top talent. The first step in recruiting top talent is to seize the opportunity to work closely with medical assistant schools and programs, especially schools that grad the highest number of medical assistants on an annual basis in the metro area that you work in. If you don't know where to start, you can call a school and ask for the career placement director or career placement services associate. They will help you to ensure that you are intentional about recruiting top talent and ensuring those top talent individuals are applying at your organization first. When you get a career placement director on a call, ensure you discuss the importance of medical assistant certification. As we all know, certification helps medical assistants work at the top of their skill set. In addition, employers are either requiring certification upon hire or within 60 to 90 days of hire. This is backed by a recent statistics that suggests that 88% of employers require medical assistants to be certified at the time of employment or shortly after. Again, encourage the schools you work with to promote national credentials prior to graduation. Many do not know how important it is, and I'll share a story with you as to why. This is Jennifer. Jennifer is a single mom that just started her job as a medical assistant. She unfortunately did not earn a certification prior to employment. She has been instructed by her employer that she has to earn her certification within 90 days to remain employed. At this point, she's trying to learn a new job, care for her family, and study for the exam while no longer being in that academic mindset. So what words come to mind when you think about Jennifer's situation? For me, it's stressed, scared, overwhelmed. She has a lot riding on the fact that she must pass this certification exam. This could also lead to thoughts of just simply giving up and quitting. The good news is that Jennifer's story just doesn't have to be the norm. This doesn't have to be the scenario. Make sure your schools that you work with know the importance of getting certified and getting their medical assistant students to earn that national credential prior to employment. And in return, for you as an employer, this helps limit turnover, especially in that first 90 days. The second tip on recruiting top talent is to review your medical assistant job descriptions to ensure you are not unintentionally causing qualified medical assistants to not even attempt to apply for a role within your organization. But before we discuss that in more detail, we're going to take another poll. How often does your organization review job descriptions to ensure the largest accredited certification providers are listed? There we go. Looks like we're getting some answers. Awesome. We'll give it a few more seconds. All right. Looks like we may have had the wrong poll running. That is okay. We will proceed. Teresa, if you could close the poll. Perfect. Thank you. So although we didn't get the answers on that, think about that. How often are you reviewing your job descriptions to ensure the largest accredited certification providers are listed? Oh, there we go. All right, we're going to take another stab at it trying to do this poll.
This is Kayla. I did a sneak attack.
Awesome. Thanks, Kayla.
Sure.
Okay. Looks like we're leaning more toward every year, every couple of years. Okay. Very good. All right, we can go ahead and end the polling. Awesome, thank you. Okay, so knowing that it's a year every other year, I'll go back to that comment I made about the thought of unintentionally causing qualified medical assistants to not even attempt to apply for a job at your organization. As you can see, if you do not list all accredited medical certification agencies within your job description, you're significantly limiting the number of qualified medical assistant applicants that are applying for your open recs. If not all are listed, including NHA's CCMA, you should make updates as soon as possible. For reference, this is an example of all of the NCCA accredited medical assistant credentials that should be listed on your job descriptions. Most employers list medical assistant credentials under the requirements section of the job posting. Having this all-inclusive list is an opportunity to eliminate confusion on whether or not a medical assistant should apply for a job within your organization. This is a game of numbers, right? So you never want to, we're in a situation where we need to get as many MA applicants as possible. So make sure everyone is included. At this time, I'll hand it over to Kayla, and she is going to discuss ways to organically create your own medical assistant talent.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much, Crystal. Well, Crystal outlined some really excellent ways to recruit much needed talent. And now I'm going to expand on that a little bit deeper, and we'll also talk about some retention opportunities as well. So we'll first talk about bridge programs, and I'll start by breaking down the different pathways that a bridge program can take. So the first pathway is through a traditional education program at either a community college, a career college, or a trade school. These typically range anywhere between about 9 and 18 months and will include some form of clinical externship or a capstone course. And they typically result in the learner's eligibility to sit for a national certification exam. The second pathway is through workforce programs. Now, workforce programs are occupational training opportunities sponsored or funded through the Department of Labor at state and national levels. They're typically shorter programs, but are fully integrated in the workforce, meaning that a student's taking the didactic portion and getting on-the-job experience at the same time. The final option here is employer-based program, and this is where we'll spend the bulk of our remaining time. So this can happen in one of two ways. One, the employer can develop their own training program that includes didactic content to teach the medical assistant the necessary material, and then provides direct hands-on experience in that healthcare system or practice. This is usually self-funded through internal investment or through grant money. The other ways that employers can develop their own training programs is to develop a direct or exclusive partnership with a school. And this looks similar to a workforce or apprenticeship model, but it's usually privately funded and managed internally. So let's zoom in just a little bit closer to these two employer-based options. Now, the first aligns with many of the scenarios that we've already mentioned, in which you partner with an existing educational institution. Those schools and programs hire the instructors, they provide the classroom training and content, and then your organization then would provide the hands-on extern portion of the program. This provides a great bridge from school to employment and really allows employers to essentially have the opportunity to evaluate that potential employee on the job. Now, we recommend partnering with educators to offer these exclusive or customized training pipelines when you don't have the internal staff or bandwidth to create or conduct your own. So the other side of that is the full in-house development. So this works really well for those healthcare employers who have educators or a full-time team dedicated to training. So there's not maybe as much of an upfront investment in developing those types of programs. Your team's able to align the content to your system or your practice's initiatives, scope of work, and best practices. The ultimate goal here is that you train your own medical assistants and have more quality control and develop loyal employees who are committed to the success of your organization. So another thing to keep in mind with this option is who you're training or developing the in-house training program for. So are you opening this up to the general public, or are you pulling from your internal staff members to move into an MA role? If it's open to the public, there will, of course, need to be some more foundational training, and it will probably be maybe a little bit longer of a program. Whereas if you're pulling from internal candidates, depending on their background and maybe the department that they were previously in, they maybe already have some foundational knowledge. So the program could potentially be a little bit shorter. So I think Kelly Aiken here on the screen really says it best when she says the frontline is better trained, when the frontline is better trained and has career advancement opportunities within the organization, there's a direct correlation to improved patient care and improved patient satisfaction. And I truly believe this. We just reviewed a number of avenues of collaboration with educational partners and workforce opportunities, which we've seen lead to an increase in qualified candidate pipelines. But there's an even greater impact opportunity here. By increasing your educational partnerships, you improve the quality of your candidates, which improves patient satisfaction and patient outcomes, which is really, I think, the ultimate goal for all of us. So we focused a lot on the recruitment and the buckets that you can pull from to get qualified candidate pipeline feeding into your organization. Crystal and I both also consistently hear about that retention is a challenge. So it's estimated that there's over 500,000 MAs working in the United States with a 40% turnover of employed MAs on an annual basis. And if you think back to, Crystal mentioned to us that it's about $14,200 a cost to the employer for turnover. It's a very high cost to employers. We're dealing within the billions of dollars on an annual basis in MA turnover across the nation. So through our partnerships, we're finding that retention really increases when employers purchase certifications for their employed or non-certified MAs, and they create career ladders, which we'll really dive into and talk about here shortly. So this opportunity to invest in your medical assistants makes them feel important. It makes them feel valued. They take pride in earning credentials behind their name and feel more of a sense of loyalty to the employer that shows their investment and shows them a career pathway within their organization. So this leads us to career laddering. So career laddering really gives the employers the opportunity to recruit top talent and provide professional growth, leading to enhanced retention, enhanced productivity, all while hopefully managing and mitigating risk. So let's take a quick poll here again to see where our audience sits with career ladders. So if we can launch that poll here, Teresa, if we're able to do that. And this is just a simple question of yes or no. Do you have a career ladder in place? Yes, no. And if you're not sure, that's okay too. And if we can launch that, or I'll launch the poll here. I think I can do it. There we go. I think
All right, Kayla, for some reason I couldn't advance it. I apologize.
That's okay. I think I did it. So yeah, just a simple yes or no. And if you're not sure, that's okay too. We'll give everybody a couple seconds here. Seen a few more no's than yeses here. Couple more seconds. Looks like we're pretty good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll here. So yeah, a few more no's than yeses. And yeah, that's really good. So the good news is we're going to kind of share some opportunities for how to create some of those career ladders and career pathways. So before you can really put together a plan for training options, you'll want to identify what is a career pathway or what does a career ladder look like in your organization for incoming and current medical assistants, or for those that are wanting to become a medical assistant. So we'll kind of show some examples here. And actually on the screen, if we go to the next slide, you'll see an example of a career ladder or a career advancement opportunity. Typically, it's recommended that as MAs progress through each step that they experience a pay increase as well. So that's kind of a standard general understanding. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but often the first step in the career ladder is just obtaining that certification if your MAs are not yet certified from an accredited certification agency. This allows you as the employer to the added benefit of ensuring quality and safety in your clinics. And what we found is that physician confidence also tends to increase in their medical assistants when they're certified, as Crystal alluded to with us earlier. Step 2 here is just expanding that medical assistant scope of work, allowing them to take on additional tasks. Maybe that's scribing, or maybe that's health coaching, or whatever that looks like in your organization. So we have our credential. Now we can trust them to take on these additional tasks. And then step 3 could be promoting that MA to a team lead role, or maybe more of a supervisory type position. And this role in MA can lead team huddles as well as maybe train other medical assistants. It also allows the MA to help ensure that the physician is in flow and on time. We've learned from our employer partners that not only does retention increase with a standardized career ladder in place, but patient satisfaction scores also tend to increase, while the burden of work for physicians decreases with the adoption of folks like MA team leads, et cetera, because everyone's working at the top of their skill set. Everyone's allowed to work at the top of their license. So I'll switch over here and talk a little bit about wanted analytics. They're also known as Talent Neuron, and they've published this information regarding medical assistant salaries based on years of experience. And as you can see across the country, organizations are developing pay scales based on experience. But as we discuss training programs and career ladders, you'll want to consider what else do you make a priority in your organization? How can you incentivize your staff to advance in their roles, and how do you develop them into high-performing, contributing members in your organization? So if we switch over to the next slide here, you'll see that pay scale is important. Maybe you're going to include things like study time for your medical assistants or other support structures. But I think the major factor here is that no matter where you land, to make sure that you clearly communicate the steps for advancement and that you communicate early and often. So maybe from the time that that medical assistant is in their program or in their onboarding phase, they know that your organization not only wants to hire them, you want to help them grow in your company, and you have clearly defined steps in what that progression looks like and how they can achieve it. I think that's something that's really important as well. So even if you have a career ladder in place, sometimes it's just reimagining that a little bit. And I think the story that I'll share with you here shortly or right now will help you to better understand of why it's so important to make sure that well, hey, we've had this thing in place. Why isn't anyone taking advantage of it? So let's dive into that. If we switch to the next slide here, I'll share with you a story of how an employer that created a career ladder to provide career advancement for their medical assistant team members if they were to become certified. So they start out as an MA1, and then upon certification, they could grow to an MA2. And there were some other benchmarks in climbing up that ladder, kind of similar to what we just showed as an example. So after years of having this in place, the organization realized that only 16 team members actually took advantage of the opportunity. So this employer reached out to their staff and they said, well, hey, why aren't you taking advantage of this? We have this for you. We have this ladder, but nobody's doing it. And the MAs actually shared with them that, hey, we don't have the ability to pay up front for our certification, even if we're being reimbursed. When you think about the MA's pay scale, that makes some sense there. We're having to make some tough decisions about, am I going to take care of my family this week, or am I going to pay for this MA exam? So let alone, I can't pay for this upfront cost, let alone find the time to study and really have those structures in place that I need to help me be successful on the certification exam. So that led this employer to reach out to NHA. And so together, NHA partnered with the employer to create an embedded MA certification program. So the employer provided the upfront cost for their staff members to obtain their certification. They used NHA's outlines and our pacing guides and our communication templates to really facilitate the process. And they actually provided candidates with an in-house coach to support them through the study and the preparation process. They even gifted them with 3 hours of on-the-clock study time each week. This employer first started off with a pilot group, and they said, hey, we'll just buy 100 kind of seats, and we'll allow 100 seats for this just to start. And when they pushed this out to their medical assistants, they were so excited that they actually had more registrants than they had seats available, which was really exciting. So to this date, that organization has successfully certified over 300 medical assistants across their organization. So when I said earlier that only 16 had taken advantage of this, when you take into mind that they have hundreds of medical assistants, you can see how small that opportunity was, but now they've grown that. So they have over 300 certified MAs today. So with the supports in place, they also have a 95% pass rate on the CCMA exam on the first attempt. So again, providing this appropriate support, providing an investment was key in really standing these medical assistants up for success. And if you go to the next slide here, I know some of us have our fists clenched because we're thinking, you're asking me to spend money and I can't do that. And there's all kinds of things that come into play with that. And so it's important to have data points in mind. It's important to understand the return on your investment. So here's a few numbers. Before their partnership with MA, the MA turnover was in the 75th percentile. Within 1 year of starting this new support structure and providing this investment, their MA turnover was in the 10th percentile, which is honestly practically unheard of to make this dramatic and this of a change and in this positive of a direction. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that throughout the duration of our partnership, they've consistently maintained between the 10th and 12th percentile So what that shows us, and if we see on the next slide here, is that again, their MA's vacancies have decreased by 43%, which is tremendous. So lower turnover rates indicate that not only did they have not only were they hiring MAs, but they retained them. They gave them a reason to stay. They showed investment and they provided all of these things up front. So we know it can be overwhelming. We know it can be intimidating to develop a career ladder, but we're here to help with that. So what you'll see on your screen now is a simplified outline as to what steps really need to happen in this process. So step number one is just identify your motives. What is your goal? What are your goals here? Hopefully we've provided some of that today, but think along the lines of increasing retention, increasing the quality of your medical assistants and in their training. Step number two is putting together your baseline competencies. We showed you the MA levels that were supported by Wanted Analytics and Talent Neuron based off of years of experience. You saw some great recommendations from one of our employer partners, but determine if those align with your system or your practice. Are there additional skills or micro credentials that you would want your steps to include? For example, NHA has soft skills training for healthcare professionals and motivational interviewing training to better engage patients. And we have learning resources and training on team-based care, or that value-based care model, or for those that are operating in that setting. And we're happy to consult with you on the types of things that you might want to consider for your organization and your role, roles based on your goals. Next is to outline the career ladder. So the great news is if you haven't gotten started on your career ladder already, we'll provide you with a sample outline that you can use as a follow-up to today's call. The design phase will be really specific to your organization, but this is where you get the final buy-in from stakeholders and the ROI. You'll want to identify the team that will be part of the education and implementation process. You likely already have job descriptions in place. Crystal talked about this a little bit, but once the program's been formalized, you want to make sure that these job descriptions and opportunities reflect the appropriate language and they're applicable to the roles that you've developed. Getting closer to implementation, you'll educate the leader. So think your practice managers, your recruiters, many of you that are on the phone, you want to align your team on this process. You're really the key players to get buy-in from your medical assistants and just this process overall. You'll likely be fielding a lot of initial questions. So having an FAQ document or a one-sheeter available that really outlines the process will be really helpful. Again, clear communication and clear steps for your staff are really, really critical. Finally, it's just making the formal announcement and just generating excitement about this. Not as this is something that you have to do to keep your job, but this is our investment in you. This is an awesome opportunity for your medical assistants to think big picture in what's next for them and really give them the motivation to be committed to your organization. And a great way to do this is to assign champions from within your pool to maybe be peer leaders and truly lead the way through this initiative. So the bottom line here is that it often will take several of the strategies that we've talked through today from both the recruitment and the retention standpoint to recruit and retain your medical assistants. It takes everyone working together with the understanding that the gap here is significant. We know that. There's room at the table for everyone, and it takes everyone to help really fill this demand. By working together, we can really help empower medical assistants to access a better future. And again, ultimately just impact the bottom line, which is improved patient care. So at this time, I am going to turn it back over to Lauren to wrap things up for us. And while she's doing that, and while we're making that slight transition here, I just encourage you to type any questions that you might have into the chat. And we really appreciate your time today. So I'll turn it back over to Lauren now to close things out for us.
Thank you, Kayla. And first, thank you both Kayla and Crystal for your insights. That was super valuable. And I'd like to leave you with 3 takeaways today. First, keep the dialogue open and find ways to continue to grow your MAs. Second, make sure you're not limiting your candidate pool and include all accredited certification exams in job descriptions. And third, be aware of the trends that impact your MAs. So at this time, I would like to invite you to please type any questions that you have in the chat, and we'll do our best to address those as we round out our time together. I also want to thank you for being here and remind you that you can expect a follow-up email within the next week. That includes a recording of today's presentation, as well as a sample career ladder outline and how to contact both Crystal and Kayla. Thank you, and go ahead and put those questions in the chat. Thanks again, everybody.
So we do have a question. Do employers generally prefer partnering for training specific to the employer, or do they prefer to align with the defined national standards, which are required at like the National Registered Apprenticeship? What do employers see as pros and cons of each?
Since Kayla has talked for the last few minutes, I'll go ahead and answer that question, and Kayla, feel free to jump in. In our experience working with employers, every employer has a little bit of a different need. More often than not, we're hearing that they are trying to get assistance on the didactic portions for perhaps moving a med tech to a medical assistant or a front office person to become a medical assistant. So in that instance, that's very tailored to the employer. Sometimes they just simply need to earn a certification. And so that's tailored to the employer based off of some of their needs. Or of course, there's the apprenticeship path. So there's the Department of Labor apprenticeship path, in which case the standards and competencies are pretty set. Sometimes there's a non-DOL path in which they're funding this themselves as the employer, and they have a very defined way in which they intend to go about teaching the competencies needed to become a medical assistant. So I think the shortest answer is there's not this one size fits all scenario. As we work with employers, every employer is approaching this in a slightly customized manner. Kayla, do you want to add to that?
No, I think, yeah, you absolutely nailed it. I think there's a lot of different options out there. It's really kind of up to the employer. And ultimately, when we talk about apprenticeships, it's important, to Crystal's point, to determine, are we talking about the Department of Labor registered apprenticeship? Or are we just kind of having in our mind this apprenticeship model? So yeah, there's certainly all things that we're happy to kind of talk through with you to see what we can determine is the best fit for your organization.
Great.
This is Melody with NHA. There have been a few other questions that have come in. The next one that came in is, can NHA help with career ladder development?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, yes. That's the short answer. Yes, we can. Yes, we have lots of experience between Crystal and myself and the rest of our team in working with both educators and employers across the nation. And I think that's something that NHA is really uniquely positioned in, that we do work with both educators and employers. And so as you're talking and you're thinking about career ladder development, we kind of talked about the different buckets that are available. We can see, what do you have the internal bandwidth to handle? And do we need to pull or tap into some educational partners in your area? So yeah, we're certainly happy to talk through that with you, and we can help with the development of that ladder. And we actually have some training resources that can serve as rungs on that ladder. So yes, we can help with that.
Excellent. So the next one that came in, and I think we know the answer, but it's great for everyone to learn from it, is, does a non-certified MA get paid less, or should they get paid less?
So in our research, we do identify that typically if you're certified, you do earn a little bit more, but I will say that every employer does handle that situation a little different. So I think across the board, we're finding that to be true, but employers are definitely customizing that answer a bit.
Great, thank you. The next one that came in from Joe Husky, who asked, have you considered specialty programs like MA for OBGYN?
Yeah, so NHA is an incredibly innovative organization and always looking at the industry to ensure we help create the best medical assistants and employed medical assistants possible. So the short answer is yes, we're looking at all types of specialties.
There's a couple that came in from the question and answer portion. Jalen Smith, if you would like to enter into the chat just the rest of your question, we'd love to answer it. And in the meantime, we'll move to Jenny Berkey's question, which is how would you entice MAs to come work at your office? What are some key words?
I'll start, and I think Crystal probably has some thoughts too, and I'll probably steal a little bit of your thunder, but I think one of the first things that Crystal mentioned is making sure that your job descriptions don't exclude any of the accredited national certification. So there's I think a handful of fully accredited national certification agencies out there. And by eliminating some of the largest ones, you're eliminating a candidate pool. So that'd be one of the first things that I would do is make sure in your job description, because candidates often look at job descriptions and they'll eliminate themselves from applying if they don't see something that, well, I have a certification from here. So does that mean that they're not going to accept me? And I think right now, by and large, many employers are saying, if you have an accredited national certification, we would like you to work with us just because we need medical assistance so badly. So make sure that your job descriptions are all encompassing and that you're not eliminating candidates or having them feel like they can't or shouldn't apply because there's not all of the certification agencies listed or something along those lines. So that's where I would start. Crystal, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, if you have any additional room to add any career laddering that you have in place from the get-go by looking at your job descriptions, they can tell that you value them as a medical assistant, that you will continue to invest in them and help them grow in their careers. And so that would be the second thing that I would definitely encourage within job descriptions.
Yeah, I think just to expand on that, as I mentioned, and I think it's no secret right now that sometimes we're losing MAs because down the road they were offered $1 an hour more, right? And so if we can show them that progression in, from the very beginning, maybe from the time that they apply, that, hey, we're going to hire you here, but here's how we want to continue to invest in you. And here's what our ladder and progression can look like. So just because we're hiring you as an MA1 right now, here's what the pathway looks like. Put it in your job put it in your job posting and talk about that in the recruitment process. I think that means a lot, and it helps maybe ensure that they're taking the steps and they're not as incentivized by that $1 or $2 more an hour down the road. That a lot of that's happening right now.
Great. We have one more question, unless others you'd like to input. Now would be a great time to do that. But the last question I'm seeing says, NHA allows programs to be completely online without a requirement for externship or hands-on practice. So that's very different from other programs that require hands-on demonstration lab before going to externship through other agencies. Is there a way for employers to identify a CCMA that was completely online versus a full program?
So I'll take the first approach to answering that. Kayla, feel free to jump in. I do want to point out that NHA does not actually go through and look at a program, require them to submit an application for the entire program or curriculum. That is where we feel like the accreditation agencies have their responsibility. If they are an accredited organization or state approved, they need to be following those regulatory requirements. So I think first and foremost, I want to be very clear that NHA does not go through and review the entire program from start to finish in terms of curriculum. Secondly, I would say that that's why it's so critically important that you do develop strong relationships with your educators, right? It's making sure that you are very clear with them on what the expectations are, and they are always willing to embrace feedback. They want to hear from you. So if there's something that you do not necessarily agree with that an educational institution is doing in your local area, or you feel like those individuals may have skills gaps, reach out to them. They definitely are there to make sure that they provide the best medical assistance to the local employers, and again, very willing to hear that feedback.
Yep. Only bit I would add is that NHA works with only state approved or accredited institutions. So you must have a state approval or an accreditation to work with NHA. And so to Crystal's point, while we don't review every component of their curriculum, that's what that accrediting agency is to do. And so if they have provided that accreditation, then that makes that candidate eligible for our certification exam. So yeah, very, and can't encourage more just developing that relationship with your local schools. If they're not maybe providing some of the skills or some of the things that you wish the MAs had, ask if you can be on their advisory board or sit down with them. Most schools are very open to your feedback and they want it and they need it. So if they're not hitting the mark and you're considering going out and developing your own program, at least try having a conversation with them first. I think they're super open to that. And now more than ever, schools are willing to be flexible to meet the needs of their local region and their local workforce. So I think it's worth a conversation. If you're having trouble making the connection, you can reach out to your any of us here at NHA, and we're happy to try to see if we can facilitate those conversations as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much. From Sharon Lacey Supik, who says, thank you for such an informative presentation. That ends all questions in the chat and the Q&A.
Very good. Well, hey, everyone, thank you so much for your time today. Stephanie's posted and several folks have, as Lauren mentioned, the recording will be shared in the slides. I think several of you have asked for the slides, so we will share these out probably sometime next week once everything is rendered and fully processed here. So we'll share this over with you. If y'all have any questions, we encourage you to reach out to us. We're happy to help, again, facilitate any conversations with educators, or as you're considering different recruitment and retention initiatives, we're happy to help through that process and guide you through. So we're grateful for your time. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll give you about 15 minutes back in your day. Have a great day. Thank you.